All right, let's talk about robots. They're moving out of factories and right into our daily lives. They're serving us coffee, they're helping out in hospitals, and you know what? They're going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. But what happens when they do? Today, we are diving deep into some really fascinating new research that basically puts a robot on trial. We're going to explore why we judge our mechanical coworkers so differently depending on the situation. So yeah, let's get right into it. So let me ask you this. Picture a service robot, and it just messes up. Maybe it drops your order. Or even worse, it gives you the wrong critical information. Who gets the blame? Do you blame the programmer, the company that owns it, or, and be honest, do you find yourself getting angry at the robot itself? Well, it turns out our judgment isn't random at all. According to this research, our answer hinges on two crucial clues that we're going to investigate today. First, the environment the robot is working in, and second, what it actually looks like. Believe it or not, these two things completely change how we react when a robot fails. Okay, so our first clue takes us to the scene of the crime, if you will, the workplace. You see, not all robot jobs are created equal, and it turns out that the stakes of the environment play a massive role in how much we're willing to forgive. Let's just compare two totally different settings. On one hand, you've got a healthcare clinic. Here, the stakes are incredibly high, right? A mistake could have severe, life-altering consequences, so our expectation is absolute, flawless precision. But then, on the other hand, you have a coffee shop. The stakes are low. A wrong coffee order is, well, it's an inconvenience, but it's not a catastrophe. We're just naturally more tolerant of little errors here. This difference is absolutely key. So to test this, researchers set up a pretty clever experiment. They had over 400 people interact with a chatbot named Alex. Half the people were told Alex worked for a healthcare service. The other half were told it worked for a food service. In both scenarios, a fake customer comes in and verbally insults the bot, causing it to crash and flash an error message. And the results? Whoa, they were crystal clear. People had way less tolerance for the chatbot's failure when they thought it was working in a hospital. They judged it more harshly, they had more negative feelings about it, compared to the exact same bot with the exact same failure, but in a cafe. So the big takeaway here is context matters. A lot. But wait, that's only half the story. Let's move on to our second clue, which adds this whole other layer of complexity. See, it's not just about where the robot works. It's about what it looks like. And this is where things get really interesting. So here it is, the big reveal from the second part of the research. We hold robots that look more like us, more human, to a higher standard. We judge them way more critically when they fail, but, and this is a huge but, only when the stakes are high. Just look at this table. The contrast is fascinating. In almost every single case, whether the robot looked like a machine or the setting was a low-stakes cafe, people's reaction to failure was pretty much neutral, no big deal. But that top row changes everything. A human-like robot failing in a high-stakes healthcare setting, that was the only combination that triggered a very negative reaction. It shows us that the combination of a human face and a critical job creates this unique kind of psychological pressure. Okay, so we know what we do. But the next logical question is why? What's the psychological motive behind putting the human-like robot on trial, but only in these very specific situations? Seriously, what is going on inside our heads? Why is it that specific combination, human-looking, high-stakes job, that triggers such a strong negative response? Well, the researchers dug into this, and they found two key psychological drivers at play. The first concept is a bit of a mouthful. It's called perceived deservingness. But all it really is our deep-seated need to believe the world is fair, that people, and in this case robots, get what they deserve. So when a human-like robot fails at a really important job, we subconsciously feel like it has violated some higher standard of conduct, and therefore it deserves our blame. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. This is a direct quote from one of the questions that people in the study had to answer. They were literally asked if they agreed with the statement that the robot deserves the bad that happens to it. It just goes to show how much we apply these very human, almost moral frameworks to machines that happen to look like us. Now, the second piece of the puzzle is about our own personalities. It's called trait anthropomorphism, which is just a fancy way of saying how likely you are as a person to see human qualities in non-human things. You know, like seeing a face in the clouds or thinking your car has a feisty personality. Now, you might think that the people who do this the most would be the harshest judges, right? Well, that's where the final twist comes in. Get this, in a totally counterintuitive twist, the study found that this harsh judgment was strongest for people who scored low to medium on that anthropomorphism scale. The very people who don't typically see minds and intentions in machines are the ones who react most negatively when a human-like design fails at a critical task. It seems that for them, the human-like appearance creates expectations that, when broken in a serious context, lead to a much, much stronger backlash. So, what does this all mean for the future? We've seen the evidence, we've examined the motive. Now let's move to the verdict and see how this all leads to some really practical advice for how we should be designing and deploying our robot coworkers. The main takeaway for anyone out there designing robots is this: one size does not fit all. You have to match the robot's appearance to how important the job is. In a hospital, where your tolerance for failure is basically zero, a more functional, tool-like robot might actually build more trust and get less blame than a friendly-faced human one. Those human-like designs, maybe they're better saved for the low-stakes jobs, like in a cafe, where a mistake isn't a big deal and a friendly face can actually be an asset. It is all about managing our expectations. And all of this leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending question. As we build robots to work alongside us in more and more critical roles, is the key to a successful partnership actually making them look less like us? It's a real paradox to think about. To build better relationships with our machines, we may need to make them feel more like machines, not less. Thanks for joining me.